I reckon you need to get Agentic in there at some point.
I mean, can you imagine? Yeah, kind of create me a new job title.
And then you need an agent to work out what it actually means at the end,
Yeah, I'm still figuring that out now.
I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Rob Kernan.
And this is Realities Remixed Live, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week co-sponsored by Google. And we are live at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas for Google Cloud Next 2026.
Woo!
Excellent.
Did I woohoo too early there, David?
Robert's here, everyone.
Hello. How are you? I'm here again.
Yes. Now, unfortunately, Esme can't be with us this week.
Oh, sad.
But we have got a roving reporter. Now, I can see the green-eyed monster coming out in you already.
I'm jealous.
Now,
That's my gig. That's my gig.
Yes, for those of you that may have listened to the show for a long time, Robert was introduced on the show as roving reporter Robert Kernan.
That was a long time ago, that, David.
It was
2022.
Not a lifetime ago, wasn't it?
22.
Was it 22, Marcel?
It was 22.
Yeah.
Yes, 2022.
I'm older. I'm wiser.
And now look at you.
Look, yes, exactly.
Look at us.
Look what's gone wrong. It's been a story of woe and disaster.
But we have with us, hopefully, to go above the bar that you set. Do you think that's? I think it's possible.
I think it would be. Yeah. I don't.
Is roving reporter Rachel Belmonte.
Hello.
It's
How
a good
are
job. Your name starts with an R, so we can use the
It
roving
is.
reporter thing. I think that was just.
It's like a triple R thing, yeah.
We'd have to come up with something else. Some other type of reporter.
It's easy though. We're lazy, aren't we? Yeah. Roving reporter
It
Rachel
took us
is much
ages to
easier.
find someone with a name beginning R. It was easy to do that than actually find an actual roving reporter. Anyway, so you good?
Yes, I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. Thanks for stepping in. It's good to have you. Now, your first Google Next.
It is my first Google Next, yes.
How is it so far for you?
It's great. I mean, you can't even comprehend the scale of it, if I'm honest. You do lots of summits, etc. locally. It doesn't compare. It really, really doesn't.
Right,
It's huge.
right.
It's huge. Day one, already very, very busy. Very
Anything
busy.
you got your eye on, particularly for them to either experience or learn from, or?
I must admit, the generative media AI, that's the one that I really am excited about, definitely. So excited to go to the expo hall, try it out, see it for myself. Can't wait to kind of take it back. So
And don't forget to get 9 hours of gambling in afterwards as well.
never, Rob. Come on.
So Rachel's going to be with us for all the shows, I think, this
Yeah.
week.
Yep.
I'm going to be bringing us some news and updates from the floor, which we'll get to in a second by way of opening it. But there's another new thing here at the moment.
No, hang on. You can't have too many new things.
It's all like it's the fundamental problem, isn't it? We've changed too many things at once.
But we've still got the same producer.
We have, but as loath as I am to admit this, he's played a blinder, haven't you, Marcel?
Yeah. Everything is new.
Everything is
This is all new. The new
equipment.
box is very exciting,
Yeah.
isn't it? You've never seen such glee between me and Dave when we got the new recorder.
It's got a big red button.
It's
Rob.
got a big red button, so there's going to be no recording failures now.
One of the things of the little device that we record these things on, particularly when we do them live, is the record button on the old device was very small, and you couldn't easily tell when it was recording.
Oh, it was awful.
And we had a couple of mishaps, didn't we, Marcel, with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. All blaming on Rob.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
But
So
now-
not pushing the button, but this you can't miss it.
So it's Marcel's job
Yeah.
to push the button. First thing he does, deflect straight onto me. So now I've got control over the button.
Yeah.
Going straight off a slopey shoulder,
Yeah.
straight into your lap.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm now in control.
But-
so
but-
all failure.
But Rob, the red light is so heavy, you need sunglasses almost. Huh?
It's also got mute buttons, so I can mute you if I want now as
There's
well.
a few too many buttons. I
lots
think this
of
is what we're
buttons.
soon going to find out.
Very exciting. I'm loving the control.
Some like good knobs on it as well.
There's a gag in there somewhere, Dave.
But not only new recording device, new mics, new arm booms. How do you call that? It's
Boom.
boom,
Boom.
boom. Yeah,
Arm booms.
Boom.
yeah. So
Is it a boom?
It's exciting,
It's all nice and fresh.
nice and fresh.
We had to do it actually because at
Yeah.
the end of
The end of the last
at
one.
the end of when we did the last live show, which was reInvent just before Christmas, the last couple of recordings, basically everything started to break.
But it was like cascade failure.
It was an absolute catastrophic failure. Like
cables all went. The mic stopped working.
The boom arms were collapsing.
Yeah.
It was absolutely bizarre, wasn't it? But yet we're here and we are all fresh. And it's surprising we're feeling fresh, isn't it, Rob?
No, not at all.
We might have had a couple of drinks last night.
It was a lovely
To
part
settle
of North Vegas.
Now, what was particularly funny is we're sitting around in this booth, and then one of our colleagues comes and joins us and sits on the end. And Rob, who obviously hadn't been paying attention, looks up immediately and points directly in his face and goes, "Who are you?"
Sorry, Dan. Sorry.
There you go. There's your opportunity to get it on record.
My humble apology.
Okay, on to business. Google Cloud Next 2026. It's been a year since the last one. I'm guessing. Now, look, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Rach.
Yeah, go for
Are
it.
you ready?
I'm ready.
Prediction time. There's going to be some agentic in there.
Really? An agentic era, maybe?
I suspect we're going to see something about agents. What do you think?
I think it'll all be like...
But it was a fad.
Yeah, that's it. It's over. It's
done.
done. They're going to announce it, and that's it. Gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Switch Gemini off. Don't need any more.
Yeah,
Just turn
it's
it
done.
on. But again, grand thing. Like you know, I like grand gestures.
Yeah.
There's a sort of like just big button.
We tried it. Like last year, I think they did. I think A2A last year. Which we
A2A
thought
and
looked good,
MCP was
and
the other
MCP.
one. Yeah.
So it looked like there was the beginning of hatching technologies that were going to start the scaling conversation.
Orchestration.
Orchestration, indeed.
Word.
Context and semantics.
I once saw an architect misspell that word quite badly on a document that went to quite a senior group of
With a
people.
K?
No,
Spelled
it
with a
was
K?
or and then another word, and there was and the option was that technology or that option.
No.
And I tell you what, the everybody just burst out laughing. Like you've never seen when the slide went up. And then he just went, you've never seen a colour of red quite like it. I'm still
good.
embarrassed for him, remembering the situation.
That is good. So, yes. Anyway, moving on from that. So I think it's fair to say over the last year, we have seen the conversation shift now in user organizations into what does scale mean for us. There's still a lot of proof of concepting going on, but what does scale mean for us? So I think that's the very, very short snapshot of the industry as we come into it.
And it's the agency that we're giving to the agents themselves that's, I think, quite dramatically changed since we were last here, where people are willing to let agents go away and do stuff, actual work, and trust them a bit more, and they can be unattended for a lot longer.
Well, if we just even think a year before that, sorry, taking a little short trip down memory lane, you've got 2024, what is Gemini?
Yeah.
25, well, how can I build an app?
Yeah.
And now it's, well, how can an agent run my department?
Yeah.
Like it's,
Big
it's
change, isn't it?
Very big changes.
change.
Very big
Agency.
changes. Yep.
So what are we expecting? What are the big themes that are going to be prevalent this week?
Well, I'm definitely expecting something around an evolution of Gemini. Gemini 3.1 plus.
4, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? And then on top of that, Vertex AI as well. It'll be a miss if that didn't happen at all. And thinking about the builder and any of the multi-step reasoning that sits behind all of that as well. Google naturally, they would say something about their hardware stack as well.
Always. It's exciting.
It is
That's
very
the bit I get very
exciting.
excited about. Bit of silicon for the day.
Yeah, so TPUs, Rob, there you go. That's,
warming up.
Exactly. Definitely, as mentioned, there'll be things around the generative marketing side of it as well with AI. So again, evolution of their VO Suite, Nano Banana, all sorts.
Marcel likes Nano Banana. He's always on it, making stupid photos of us.
No, I even created a nice picture of you with friends for
Literally gonna say that.
countdown.
You had to use AI to give Dave friends. That's great.
We did a thing where like I go out with a couple of my friends, and I sent a picture of the three of us and said, Marcel, make this like a picture of the three of us having the best time that you could possibly imagine. Steady. And the addition of giant gold chains was the bit that really that really took
AI
me.
knows you all too well, Dave. It's got good context.
And
there.
extensive food, and chains,
Really-
everything on
really,
it.
Yeah.
really,
It was
really
excellent
funny.
classes.
Who did? Somebody put Stato and Waldorf's head on us last night in the pepper mill as well. I think it was Yap.
I've
Which just
forgotten about
showed me the photo and went, "Where's that come from?"
Forgotten about that. So yeah, the big themes then this year, I think we're going to see, just building on what Rachel was saying there, I'm going to see AI first enterprise transformation. So, the AI first definitely emerged now, and AI native as kind of cultural signifiers of how things are being approached to start with from a leadership and design perspective, and then executed. Agentic AI is the next paradigm. Data as foundation, sovereign cloud and trusted AI, infrastructure modernization that's going to be required. Then we're going to see some stuff about wide area networking there, I suspect. Security and resilience as AI scales, a fundamental and maybe, arguably, slightly under-talked to subject, I think, security and resilience. And then final, dev productivity and platform engineering.
That experience bit really matters. How you drag people into the ecosystem and get them to work differently. So how work gets done needs to change. The experience around how work gets done differently is also extremely key as well. So I think we'll get some developer announcements around the Gemini platform and the Vertex platform.
Yeah, it will not just be developer announcements. I expect big customer announcements as well. Either customers that are already doing this, possibly, and have embraced it, possibly under the radar, or kind of net new big customer announcements as well. So yeah, looking forward to keynote tomorrow.
Maybe, just maybe, this is the first couple of steps on your adoption lag thing, where it's the elastic band starting to drag everyone up the steps. Maybe this is it.
Let's test that, shall we? So, look, stick with us. We're going to be here all week. We'll have 6 episodes going out as quickly as we can after we record them. But let's first go to our conversation with Mark Steele. Mark is the retail industry lead at EMEA Google Cloud. So, Mark, good to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We are okay.
Good.
Day one.
Yes.
Day one, you got in last night, I understand.
Yes. Long journey, but very excited about the conference.
Yes. It's early to say, perhaps, but how is it feeling in comparison to last year for you so far?
It's bigger. I mean, it feels like there's more energy already. I mean, I just spent some time down at the convention center, and it's filling up. I mean, this is kind of the day before the big day.
Yeah.
And it's already busy down there, kind of loads of folks getting in early. So yeah, I'm excited.
And maybe just explain a little bit about your day job.
That is a good question. So I lead our kind of retail industry from a strategic industries perspective. So I guess it's a combination of things. I think about retail all day, every day. It's my life. I spent my whole career in retail before Google as well.
Right.
And now at Google Cloud, I'm part of the team that really thinks about what's our strategy for the industry.
Okay.
And how do we kind of translate all this amazing technology that Google can create? We've got some of the world's best engineers. We create all this amazing technology, but use that to do things that retailers care about. So it helps having been a retailer for so many years, but ideally, we're kind of thinking, how do we create some value for retailers? And then I spend a lot of time talking to different retail businesses, not just in Europe, but around the world. So it's great, because there's always something happening. I mean, retail's it's an industry that we all touch.
Yeah.
We all shop, whether we like it or not. We are all engaged in retail as an industry. So I love that fact that you can kind of really have an impact.
Well, maybe for those that aren't familiar with actually the sort of building blocks of the industry, if you like, how would you describe the core components of retail?
Well, I mean, at its heart, it's a really simple industry, right? Retailers find stuff to sell that they think shoppers will want.
Yeah.
And then they get those items to the shoppers.
Yeah.
Get those items to customers, whether that's through a store, through e-commerce, through all sorts of different fulfillment. So, it's kind of a really simple premise. And on the retailer side, if you can buy something and sell it and make a little bit of money along the way, then you've done a great job.
Yeah.
But it's so much more complex than that, and I think if you look at how difficult it is to move product around the world right now, if you look at how, cost of living challenges across so many different countries around the world mean that consumers are always looking for more value. If you look at the way technology is shifting the way that people shop and the way that people want to have more personal experiences,
Right.
It's a very complex industry built on top of a very simple premise.
And that they're quite margin sensitive industry as well. So that creates a lot of complexity with how you operate and the way you think, like around supply chains and things like that. That's a different mindset maybe to others that
Massively.
don't struggle in the same way.
I mean, it's a low margin industry, and, I talk to colleagues that are managing other industries, and they're kind of talking about the level of margin in those industries. What a joy that would be. Because,
I'd love to.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great? Because, if you get to the end of the year as a retailer and you've got to 2, 3, 5% operating profit, you've done a fantastic job. And it's hard work. It's difficult to get there. But I think what I love about that is it really puts kind of discipline and rigor into getting things right.
Right.
This kind of old adage of right first time, it applies so much to retail because you don't have a second chance. You don't have that opportunity to kind of do things multiple times.
So there's been a series of disruptions in retail. Maybe it's ever been thus, but certainly I'm going to say since the .com era, there's been a series of very seismic shifts in expectations of consumers.
Yes.
And then in terms of how the industry needs to respond and the sort of experiences it needs to provide, I think.
Yeah.
But then more recently, of course, there's been a geopolitical change, which is kind of changing how global supply chains are working. So how would you characterize at the moment the sort of disruption and challenge that's going on in the industry?
I mean, I think it's never been more volatile.
Yeah.
As an industry, retailers are facing new challenges on an almost daily basis. And I think what's also interesting / challenging is the rate of change, the pace of those changes. I think it's coming faster, thicker and faster than we've ever seen before. So, on one hand, as you said, it's getting harder to move things around the world. It's getting harder to predict exactly where some of the challenges in supply chain might arise,
right?
Both in terms of some of the geopolitical challenges you talked about, but also just, packaging challenges, sustainability challenges, how you think about energy, how you think about the materials you're using to move products around the world. All things that retailers are thinking about and care about because their shoppers care about them. But then at the same time, those behaviors and those expectations from customers, from the shoppers, from all of us, are changing quite dramatically as well.
Right.
And I think what's really interesting about the consumer behavior changes is it's the first technology change, certainly that I've seen, where the change is being led by consumers. So I think, you touched on the .com, if you think about kind of e-commerce, really that was about retailers building websites and apps and over time building mobile experiences and saying, hey, come and try out our website. Come and try our new app. There's a whole bunch of good reasons why it would be good for you to do that, better prices, exclusive products, loyalty bonuses, whatever it might be. And then over time, shoppers embraced those new channels and, became a significant part of the mix and off we go. What's interesting about this kind of shift we're going through right now is the behavior and the expectation change is coming from the fact that we're all using AI in our daily lives. We're all kind of enjoying using Gemini and, whatever other apps are out there, getting good responses. We're getting used to being kind of prompt engineers. We're writing long questions. We're getting really rich answers. So when we turn up at our favorite retailer, when we go to their app or their website and we type in a long question and we don't get a good answer, which is...
Computer says no response. You're like, ooh.
Then I think, it creates this expectation gap. And it feels like the first time for a while where retailers are having to think really carefully about how they close that gap. They're not the ones creating it this time.
And that experience, if you can offer the best experience, that drags people in, keeps them loyal, it sets a bar, and then that you naturally get the business.
Yeah.
It's so important. I think those that understand good experience, they thrive in that space.
I think what's really challenging, but also presents the opportunity you're talking about is, we all have a slightly different take on what we think good value is when we're engaging with a retail business. It might be purely about price. We want the cheapest price. It might be about the quality of the product. It might be about fast shipping or, kind of ease of access to a local store. So we've all got this kind of inbuilt, sometimes objective, sometimes quite subjective view of what good value is. And those experiences then got to cater for all of those kind of different expectations around value, expectations around convenience. I feel like it's a time retailers really need to lean into that opportunity. This to me does not feel like the time you want to be standing back and leaning away and sort of standing on the sidelines and saying, well, we'll wait and see if this agentic AI thing actually does turn into something meaningful.
Too late. You go, it's gone.
I think this is a time where we can see the potential of the technology. There are retailers building new experiences with that technology and starting to deliver some of that value, but there's still a real competitive advantage to be had. So, if you're leaning into this now, And if you're thinking a little bit more strategically than just how can it save me 10% of my operating costs, which by the way is important as well, then I think there's a really big opportunity.
And there's a thing that Google did years and years ago, which felt like it was like early agentic, which was you could search for something and then you could tell Google, I think you still do it, where it can continue searching. If a new set of results come up, it drops you a little note, pokes you and says, hey, there's a new thing on your search query. Which I really liked, because you have this thing running in the background doing the work for you, and then if this pops up, it tells you. And that was like a really early agent-style experience, but I always used to like it because you could set things going and then you'd be notified in return if it state change.
What were you searching for, Rob?
Oh, just like holidays and jackets and whatever, David, in the retail world. Yeah. I knew as soon as I said that, I knew you were going to go there.
Jackets for holidays or two separate things?
Maybe that.
Holidays with jackets.
Holidays with jackets. Well, you could get quite interesting. It's rare though now.
Interesting results you're about to say.
Interesting results. It's rare now though if you go to Google and you ask it something, it doesn't find a result on the internet. Whereas in the early days of Google, because the internet wasn't so vast and wide,
there used to be a name, wasn't there?
You could search for something with no results.
There was a name.
Challenge.
What was that name? What's that word?
I don't know.
Where you used to search for it, and if you got no responses,
you won.
Yes,
it was the game, wasn't it?
I think there was an obscure TV show in the UK about that as well.
Yeah,
being able to find something that Google can find. But what's interesting about that, bringing it back to kind of consumers,
is a Google whack.
A Google whack.
Google whack. Anybody outside of the UK is thinking, what the hell are these guys talking about?
They normally do, Mark, to be fair.
Well, there you go. But it's interesting you say, Google's answered all the questions. Far from it. I mean, I think we tend to see somewhere between sort of 20 to 25% of all of the questions that are being asked of us through Google search are new. And, and you'd think actually Google's been doing this for kind of 26, 27 years or so. You think we've answered all the questions that people could think of, but 20 to 25% are new. And the reason that they're new is, one, they're getting longer. So we're asking these long questions because of the way we're embracing AI. We're starting to ask long questions. They're 5, 6, 10 words long rather than 1 or 2 words, which is the way we kind of all trained ourselves to first use the internet. And they're multimodal. So what I mean by that is so many of them now have got a picture or a video or using voice. And so it's no longer just about typing words into a phone or into a keyboard. We're seeing these kind of different questions. It
has ruined the where am I game, where somebody takes a photo of a place and it's the first to work out where they are. You just whack it straight into Google. It says, where is this?
There
and they go
into
here.
That.
And all the restaurants slightly towards the back on the left-hand side. Let's double down a little bit on industry redesign when it comes to retail generally. You speak to a lot of customers. You're obviously in an organization that's driving the state of the art. What's emerging to you as the sort of core tenets of the redesign that's likely to happen?
I mean, I think there are probably 3 things that, I hear a lot from retailers when they're thinking about how technology, and particularly agentic AI, as this kind of, this key moment in our industry is going to change their business. They talk a lot about how can that change the way that we communicate with customers. So marketing, how is agentic AI going to transform marketing?
Right.
There is a big shift around the way we shop, which we've been talking about a little bit. But, this idea that agentic AI will fundamentally change the way that we buy things, we find products and ultimately make purchases from retailers.
And do you see that as being an extension of existing digital channels or something actually that might profoundly redesign the front end of the organization?
I think it could be both. I mean, what's interesting is, when you talk to people about agentic commerce, they immediately go to this idea of an agent is going to buy everything for us. So there's some automated, kind of explicitly consented agent that's going to go and do all your shopping for you, and you never have to think about it. And that may be a future that we get to. Who knows? I don't know. But there are some more nuanced, more fundamental shifts around this kind of future set of experiences that I think bear a little bit of kind of consideration. I think one of the big ones, for example, is this shift to conversations.
Right.
So this idea that if you think about a retail website for the last, I don't know how many years, decades now, it's tended to look the same. It's sort of taxonomy based. You've usually got a kind of heading across the top.
Yeah.
There's a left-hand menu. You've got to filter. You've got to find. You kind of refine your search. You get a list of products. You do all the hard work, right? You've got to find your stuff. And eventually you get to kind of 1 or 2 things. You might go backwards and forwards. This shift to conversation is fundamentally changing that kind of UI, that interface, because it's basically saying, I'm going to ask a question. help me find a new jacket for a holiday.
I don't know how we got there, but it was an awkward,
I was storing that one. Help me find a jacket for my holiday. I don't know who's asking that question, but you might. And, if you think about that query, help me find a jacket. Well, me talks about, what kind of brands do I like? What colors do I like? What sizes am I? Whereabouts in the world am I? Holiday, talks about different locations. What's the weather like? Is it outdoors? Is it indoors? Am I trekking through the Amazon, or am I lying on a sun lounger around a pool somewhere? So there's all this context in a question, in a conversation, that is incredibly personal to me.
Right.
And it's happening in one pane. If you think about that as a kind of user experience design perspective, it's one pane. It's no longer page 1 to page 2 to page 3, back to page 2, back to page 3. It's now one conversational pane where I might start a conversation with a retailer, an agent of a retailer, and expect it to understand my context. I might share a picture about where I am in the world or what I'm looking for, match something with this white shirt that I'm wearing today. Or here's my dining room, I'm looking for a new table and chairs. Can you help me with some recommendations? And then expect to get conversational answers in that pane.
Right.
So regardless of whether an agent is ultimately making the purchase, that's a big shift for retailers to think about.
Yeah.
This shift to multimodality is a big shift. So there are kind of these foundational changes that the best retailers are already starting to lean into.
When digital services came along, particularly in organizations that were bricks and mortar before, and then they had to create some sort of online presence, it pushed quite a bit of change back into how they structure their businesses. They had to move to distribution centers and maybe networks of delivery vans or ecosystems of delivery partners, or whatever that might look like. Do you see the fundamental changes that happened on the back of digital as something that's now good for the AI age? Or do you see the different nature of those conversations, like completely reconfiguring supply chain, for example?
It's a great question. And I think we are so early in this shift that it's a bit too soon to know what the ultimate kind of outcomes will be. And I think if you look at the history of retail, certainly the 30 years I've been part of the industry, it's just constantly evolving and changing. So let's see. But what I do think is there are a number of disciplines that were important for the internet era, if you think about it like that, that will be really important for the AI and the agentic era. So take content, for example. The way in which we find products from an e-commerce perspective, to some extent, relies on really great content. Can you describe the product that you're selling in sufficiently good detail through images, through text, in order for someone to feel confident they can make a decision online without having seen it in a shop? Because before the internet, we went to see a product and we bought it in a shop. For AI, that becomes even more important, because now you're asking an agent to find recommended products. And so the agent needs to be able to read that content, and it needs to be rich enough so that the agent can make recommendations.
It's just the next version of search optimization. But if there's a bias in the model to begin with, and that goes against you, that is also a problem. So you've got to think about how the models are working as much as the information they can get hold of and how they think.
Do you think there's going to be a situation where, say, if you're buying all your clothes online, but your agent has a bias, then it's going to start dressing you subtly differently over time?
Slowly over time.
So you don't notice it, but then 8 months later, you see someone, you'll be
you
like,
look in the mirror and you go, what happened?
When did you start wearing shorts to work? I feel like I've been doing it for years.
You can imagine this world where you've got your own personal agent interacting with the agent of a retailer.
Totally.
But you select
and making these kinds of decisions. And so, one of the questions that lots of retailers are thinking about, and also not just retailers, think about some of the payment service providers, are thinking about this concept of trust in an agentic world. When is that agent authorized to go and spend my hard-earned cash on that holiday or that jacket? When is the agent able to go and make a purchase? To what extent can it spend? When can it spend? And so this idea of kind of tokenized payments, of being able to give payments that have logic built into them, so that, there's explicit trust and consent inside the payment logic. There's a whole bunch of things and standards that are now being developed right before our eyes that didn't really exist before.
So how are you seeing in the conversations you've got, and maybe you've got use cases or some examples for this, but how are you seeing organizations respond at the moment? Like certainly at the last Next, which was almost exactly a year ago, right? We were talking about a notion that we were observing of adoption lag, where the technology companies are moving innovating so fast that it's almost not impossible, but it's very challenging for organizations, whether it be investment cycles or change fatigue or capability or whatever reason, it's extremely difficult to keep up at the moment. And
Yes.
I don't think in the last year, if anything, that's got bigger because the innovation rate's been faster.
Yeah.
So as you're talking to customers, how are they starting to approach kind of the challenges that you've been talking about?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. And I think the customers that I'm talking to are really starting to kind of take it. Not that they weren't taking it seriously before, but I think really starting to think differently about how they operate their business. So I think a couple of things. Firstly, you're right. There was this kind of big gap between what was possible and what was actually being achieved.
Yeah.
And, so you ended up with lots of small projects, lots of POCs, kind of lots of things that were started, but maybe never scaled. And maybe because they didn't have the data in the right place or there wasn't enough organizational buy-in. It was very rarely the technology couldn't do that thing. It just that, kind of wasn't scaled in the right way. So I think to answer the question, there's kind of two things that I see. On the agentic commerce side specifically, it's a really, we see retailers really leaning into what are the foundational capabilities I need to build really good commerce experiences. That's where we've got partners that are working with us to build really great semantic search, to understand those queries, to build shopping agents, leveraging Gemini Enterprise for customer experience, which is our solution suite for agentic commerce. And you'll hear some of those announcements here at the show this week from some of the kind of largest retailers in the world who are actually building these experiences and learning through doing and learning through the engagement they get from their shoppers. So I think the first thing is, we're definitely seeing retailers kind of leaning into strategic partners and leaning into kind of technology partners like Google particularly to be able to bring the technology so they don't have to build it from scratch. The second thing, and I think this is probably the more important, the more fundamental shift from a retail industry perspective all up, not just in commerce, is moving to this kind of world of thinking about orchestration for AI. So what we're trying to then prevent against is having 150 different individual AI agents created for different use cases on different platforms. I think the response that we've seen to this kind of shift into the AI era initially was every software vendor built their own piece of AI on top of their tool. So if you're using a tool for payroll, if you're using a tool for supply chain, if you're using a tool for your ERP, every single one of them suddenly then had a little AI widget that could help you with something or other.
Yeah.
And they were all great. It's not about the technology. But I think as a retailer now, the kind of step back reflective moment is we need to have some better control over this. We talked about the low margins earlier. We need to make sure this is cost effective and that we're doing this in the right way.
Yeah.
It needs to be safe and secure so that data is only shared with the right teams that need it, that, we're not leaving ourselves open to kind of threats and attacks from bad actors in the broader internet. And we need to empower our teams. So, if our marketing team are thinking about how they can transform the way marketing briefs are created, they don't need to be shackled by the fact that IT say they can't have the technology. We need those teams to have technology in their hands, but have this kind of ability to orchestrate so that, it's through one overall platform. We can manage data, like I said, and we can manage that kind of creation of agents for business use cases so that business users can get on with driving the value that's important to them. And I think that's the big difference from this kind of POC world to this more thoughtful, orchestrated landscape where you're leveraging technology like Gemini, like the family of models that Google's building, in order to then empower your teams to go and think differently about what they're building and what they're creating for their work. And I think the final thing to say on this is those retailers I see having the most success here are the ones that are going beyond what's the incremental opportunity. And they're thinking about what is the transformational opportunity. So the incremental opportunity is great. Can this help me be 20% faster?
Yeah, can it make my existing process
Can I do
work
what I do
better?
today a bit better?
It's the faster horse, isn't it? If you ask them what they want, the faster horse, not
And
the
you know
motor car.
what? That's absolutely great because, like we talked about, low margin, we need those savings, we need to be faster, we need to be cheaper in retail, and we can bank some of that and invest in. But the real opportunity comes from thinking transformationally. And this is really where often my message to CEOs and to board teams is, yes, kind of teams need to be thinking about how they can take that incremental benefit. But as a leadership team, how are you thinking about what the future of this business looks like? And how are you empowering your leaders to invest time to think differently and to be able to kind of just have this idea that says, look, if we had a blank sheet of paper, I'll use marketing because we've touched on it a couple of times, and we were thinking about, based on what we know today and the technology we have available to us today, what would creating a marketing brief look like? It would be different.
It would, but that's a fundamental shift in leadership thinking. and there's sort of, you get the traditional mindset. I've been in the industry for a long time. Do you see a change in the shape of leadership teams in retail who are able to understand this, think differently, and drive it? Because you do need to cycle new thinking in as much as you might need to remember you have to still run a going concern.
Just to build on that, because I think it's sort of where I was going to go as well.
Great minds think alike, David.
Something like that. Or weak minds think alike.
Yeah, it could be either.
Yeah, it was your point on seeding in new thought. Like, traditionally, teams that have run things have struggled to think profoundly differently.
Yeah.
You know, they invented phrases like, hey, let's think out the box around that, you know, that kind of thing. But still end up gravitating back to, well, it worked like this before, let's not be too disruptive.
Totally.
And I completely agree that the winning aspect here is going to be looking at completely the new and how that works. Over time, we've had cracks at doing versions of this with, like, globalized ERP, for example, which, you know, we've all seen 12-year programs of globalized ERP. What's your sense on then how industry is responding to the profound level of challenge that's going to be, given, frankly, not just in retail, but just generally, not a terrific track record?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's a mixed bag, would be the kind of polite way to describe it, I think. You know, I think what's challenging is you've got to run today's business while you're kind of reinventing the business for the future as well. So, you know, and especially in retail, for all the reasons we've talked about, you're not just kind of waiting for this magic moment where you switch off what you used to do and you switch on the new thing.
Oh, but that's a lovely dramatic ceremony with a big lever we can pull down. I mean, we all like one of those. Curtain reveal.
We're going to close for the day, and when we open tomorrow, you know, everything's going to be changed. It's not like that, obviously. And so, you know, kind of, you know, if you're a CEO, if you're a member of a retail board team, you've got to run today's business. It's what you're getting paid for today. But also, you need to make sure that you have a business in the future. So I think, you know, one of my favorite questions for leadership teams is, how many hours are you investing into understanding this technology?
Yeah.
How many hours in your diary this week did you have available to learn, to lean in, to understand this technology that's changing the world around us? Not just changing your business, changing the world around us. And you'd be amazed, well, maybe you wouldn't be amazed how many times the answer is, well, you know, I use Gemini, or, you know, I use ChatGPT. Like, no, I'm thinking about, how are you really thinking how this is going to change our business, talking to your teams. And, you know, I remember being in a retail business when we were going through the shift to the internet and into mobile shopping. And, you know, I was responsible for e-commerce at the time, and my teams would often bring me the latest screenshot of the new feature. And they'd bring it on a large screen on a desktop or a laptop computer.
Right.
But the future was everyone's going to be shopping on their phone. So, you know, my question was always, you know, is this mobile ready? Show me this visual on a small screen. What is it? And
I saw a thing online the other day. It was just on X, or, you know, some social media platform, and it was some Gen Z making an observation about Gen X when they need to do something important online.
A
they have to go for a big screen.
Big screen purchase.
And I think it's a bit like that. You know, if I was back in retail now, and when I talk to retail executives, you know, it's kind of, what questions are you asking your team? Is it AI ready?
Yeah.
Could it be better with AI? If you were reinventing this today, what would it look like? Are you empowering them? Are you actually giving them resource, budget, headcount to go and test some of these things? Are you sponsoring and advocating? Because I think bridging that gap that we've talked about between today's business and tomorrow's business means, for me, that means making sure that what you're doing is aligned to your business strategy. If it's not aligned to your strategy, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And in this particular case, my question then would be, how can this technology help you to deliver that strategy more quickly? And how are you empowering your teams to think differently about those choices and about those options?
But it's also, do we need to change our strategy? It's that double loop to go back and be courageous to say, well, our strategy's wrong, we need to reset. And it's, do you have the courage in the organization to say that the thing you set out on 6 months ago might have not been the right answer? Do you see a lot of that? Which is that this might change a lot more than we thought.
To some extent. I think probably the phase that we're seeing a lot more at the moment is, we believe we've got a sound strategy, because fundamentally the strategy is grounded in the, you know, the kind of outcomes we want to deliver in terms of number of customers, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of shareholder outcomes. So often we're not seeing kind of wholesale shifts in strategy, but really leadership teams asking this question, you know, how can this technology help us to either get there faster, or to shift the way in which we deliver that to such an extent that it gives us competitive advantage. For me, that's the thing I come back to all the time. What's the competitive advantage here? And do you lean in to take that advantage, or do you kind of wait and see and risk missing it?
Well, on that note, we'll let you get back on with your, I'm sure, a packed agenda for the next couple of days. But before you go, though, Rachel, where did we go for lunch yesterday?
We went to a place called Roadkill.
Roadkill?
It was Roadkill, yes. It was a barbecue smokehouse just north of Vegas Strip.
Yes.
Wow.
So we thought we'd base a couple of, the important matters now.
Yeah.
Yes.
On your preferred barbecue. So
Okay.
now, you can go anywhere you want with this. It's a big, open, ranging subject.
Yeah, there's a lot of barbecue options.
Exactly. So it could be the barbecue you make yourself, or it could be what you like to go. You might even have a favourite barbecue place. So, Mark, what's your favourite barbecue?
I'm glad we've kind of finished the preamble. We've done
Yes.
the we're into the meaty topic now.
Now, this is meaty topic.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good.
Did you like
Very well
that
done.
one? Did you like that?
Very well done.
Well, it's definitely not roadkill. I think probably I would say something like Korean barbecue. Bit of a twist on
All
your
right, I
kind
like
of
where you're
traditional
going with
barbecue.
that.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to be in Korea a few times. And I always enjoy that.
What's the differentiating factor for you?
I don't know if you've done it, but
And
you
the plate
kind of
in the
have,
middle.
you
Cook your own
have
food.
You-
coals in the middle of the
yes.
table, and
Yeah.
you cook your own meat, and you've got different dips. So yeah,
So like the social element of it as
it's
well.
like an
as the-
experience.
Yeah.
We were talking about new experiences. There's one that
Yeah.
I enjoy.
Robert would struggle with that because he doesn't like sharing food.
Yeah.
Right, we've been here before. I would maybe strategically have to set the situation
Like you have
up.
your own-
You can,
Yeah,
you can choose your own thing. You can say, this is my
You
meat.
just, you
is
just have your
mine.
own grill as well, Rob. It's fine.
I'll have my own grill.
Yeah.
I'll sit.
Sit on a separate
on
table.
another table.
I think that's the safest. I think that's the
I think it has
safest way
to be.
through.
Yeah.
I think that would be the preferred option for most people as well, if I'm honest.
Well, we do sit at a different table.
Yeah, go sit on the other table, Rob. I think it's time, yeah.
Well, look, Mark, thanks so much for spending a bit of time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great rest of the conference.
You too. Thanks.
Want to dive deeper into today's topics and what they mean for your business? Drop us a line at realitysremixed@capgemini.com. We're on LinkedIn, connect, DM, and send us your questions for future episodes. And hey, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It helps us make the show even better. Big thanks to you, Mark, and sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, producer Marcel, and of course all of you for tuning in. See you in Google's reality soon.